Now we will hear somebody talking to us from the HR context on how change management works in organizations. I'm delighted to introduce to you Harsh Israni. Harsh is in the industry for the last 2 decades, and currently he is with a multinational finance company as their Assistant Vice President, Organization Development. His expertise as an executive coach and a change practitioner helps him build, design, and execute solutions in the organizations. So without much ado, over to you, Harsh.
Thanks, Adeshna. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure of interacting with you.
Thank you. So directly jumping in. So in terms of, if we look at your role in the organization, what would be your key deliverables?
Oh, well, if we actually think about the context of change, uh, it comes with a transition phase which is full of anxiety, anxiousness, uncertainty. And I think HR plays a very critical role in aiding and managing of those emotions, maintaining transparent communication, facilitating trainings and education programs, which, if not done efficiently, can impact the two most significant matrices in the HR function, which is the employee turnover and employee engagement both.
Okay, so is in your organization, is the HR supposed to play this kind of a role in addition to more in a large scale transformation?
We do have roles defined as well, while HR does play the role because we have compensation, we have recruitment, we have training function, all of that. In addition to that, we also have change practitioners within the organization who aid project-based interventions and can seek help from various functions at that level of expertise. So it's a mixed bag of uh, what the project demands and what is it that the HR function can enable. If the change is significant without those elements, like I said, the change would fall flat on the plate.
So a lot depends on how you manage the change. So here comes the change management question of how have you been using change management, or in your whole scheme of things, that managing the way in which the change is managed, how does that fit in?
I think that the way I see this is that two significant factors which allows for a change management to fit in beautifully. The number one factor is the quantum of the change, which is the number of changes that an employee is experiencing at a particular time. So, for example, I, as an employee, may be experiencing a change on how do I claim my reimbursement. At the same time, I'm also learning the change of how do I now mark my attendance while dealing with the fact that I've just been allocated a new parking spot or a new workstation. Now, these are very small changes, but because of the fact that if they happen at the same point in time, this can really derail the employee's focus from that standpoint. So that's number one. I think that's where at an org level, if we're able to charter all the changes and then have change management practices to maybe not just project related, but at an org level, I think that's where change management finds its way beautifully. The second place where change management is really effective and has played a significant role is any change which impacts the bottom line matrices of the organization. We've really seen a huge impact of that. And if that intersects, if there's a change with a significant impact on the bottom line matrices as well as the quantum of the change very high, I think that's like the sweet spot and the desirable dream for any change practitioner.
So what do you use during a change? Meaning any tools, frameworks y'all are using?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this one change that comes to my mind where we leverage change management heavily, and I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this. We leverage this for helping our employees return to office after the pandemic. Now, the the one of the biggest tools that came in really handy was the ProSci risk assessment grid. after we'd conducted that assessment, we were able to make a lot of critical decisions, which were called for, which were not being thought of earlier. But basis that risk assessment, we were able to make decisions on the levels of flexibility we could offer basis role. So in our organization, some employees basis role need to come in for 5 days a week. Some employees need to come in for 3 days a week. And now basis role, a type of role can also come in for just 1 day a week. It was a result of that assessment that helped us uh, push into a corner where we had to design the flexibility options to help people come back to office. Post that, the continuous ADKAR assessments helped us the needs and to cater to the needs which arrived continuously through the project. So, and we did a lot of change management activities to enable that change. For example, the top leadership coming at the first to
Sure.
return to office. They were the first to return to office. Standardizing the messages of across leadership of why do we need to return to office, and standardizing messages for the reasons of why are we offering a varied and a flexible kind of a return to office scheme. What role does actually require for you to come in for 5 days? If those reasons and uh, the causation of that varied across leadership, that would have created more
Yes.
resistance towards the change. They were so, and it was that critical that the employees were in a stage, which I don't think I need to explain. It's, I think, very obvious from working from home to returning to office. That was anyways a big change. And now I realize that, hey, the person who sits next to me will only need to come in 3 days or 1 day. I need to come in for 5 days. That's another level of significant change that the person was going through. So standardizing messages on both of why do we need to return and why the flexibility was done throughout the level so that consistency of the message was maintained.
So, do you think the leaders had the standard message, or there also you had to play a role
Oh, there was a
there?
significant role. It was a top-down approach that got followed. A standardized deck got published. The manager notation of what is it that they need to say in their respective huddles, that was controlled. So yeah, a lot of that was done through controlled, structural way of what piece of information, what presentation gets pulled out, what are the trainer notes, or for that, what is the huddle document supposed to say. It was done through a lot, along with the large scale employee communications that happened in the town halls and the Q&As and the addressals and all of that.
Cool. I mean, that was, I think, I mean, more or less, the organizations which could, manage to pivot at the time of pandemic, we as human get used to that, and then coming back was a challenge for everybody, which we never thought would be, right? So thanks for that. We, as practitioners, as change practitioners, you know the importance of managing it well. But when you use a framework, or when you really do change management, who do you think it benefits? Because it's always good for a person to measure, have those indicators with you. But other than the people doing change management, who do you think benefits the most when we do it in a methodical manner?
I don't think there's one particular answer to who gets benefited the most. I think the sponsor gets the benefits, the management gets the benefit, the project team gets the benefits, our stakeholders gets the benefit, our employees gets the benefit, our practitioners get the benefit, our project team gets the benefit. So I think the overall element of just anything which helps people adapt, change faster is 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 something that will help everybody. So rather than saying who, because I think the true answer to that is almost everybody gets benefit. I think the most important thing it helps is the speed with which we achieve the intended outcomes of the change or the project which is being done.
Great. And like in this whole scheme of things, can you think of a group of stakeholders where you really had to use the change management, or, it had to be really done in that manner where you used your tools to a particular group without many getting there.
Oh,
Maybe this change or any other change, I mean.
yeah, absolutely. There's this very interesting saying that change management requires change management, and I guess I speak for a lot of HR folks. There are stakeholders want very hardcore numbers and are very number driven. They understand data, right?
Mm.
What ProSci change management framework has offered me is to remove that fluffiness from employees' concern or change resistance, or where people would blow up a particular concern because they have the level and the bandwidth to control that. It's now very interpretable for hard business leaders who understand numbers. The change adaptation cycle from an employee standpoint. I think that has really helped our stakeholders just to understand, appreciate this a lot more. And I think having a very scientific way of enabling the people side of the change is what really has helped our stakeholders adapt to this quicker and faster, and still has left you enough, and it's scientific it's in a very interesting way, but it is not restrictive. It still allows you to practice your innovative solutioning, so to influence the employee behavior and the employee action towards a change.
That's very helpful, I must say. And in the beginning, you touched upon this, so I'm going to bring back that point of when you said one employee getting impacted again and again with the same change, as we in our language call saturation. So when saturation comes, like, how do you manage? Do you plan to stack it, or how do you, like, do you have to kind of do one change, phase it out? How do you handle, how does change management help you to manage that when you see too many changes on one group happening?
So, thankfully, because we've been practicing change management for quite some time now, we are able to stagger our changes throughout the year, throughout a period of time, so that there's not a lot that an employee goes through at the same point in time. And this is one of the biggest things that I think we've achieved as a result of practicing change management. So the problem of saturation is not a problem that we deal with today. It definitely was the problem of the past, where change management definitely came in handy. So just it has helped us transition those changes of one after the other, basis priority, basis the bottom line matrices, basis the employee feedback. It just helps us plan those changes out in a better way. That is one. Uh, Secondly, any with respect to saturation and then the resistance that we primarily noticing in the kind of changes that we are bringing is very specific to changes, not so much so of coming with other changes. There's hardly any interlinkages between that. So thankfully, we've been able to progress from that stage by introducing concepts of change management early in the organization.
Great. So what would be your advice to change leaders, specifically from HR to, like, because by default, I guess sometimes the people changing, so the responsibility comes on the shoulders of HR to do the people part of the change, and that's all change management. So what would be your advice to those leaders?
Um, a very simple advice, and I touched upon it earlier, that ProSci change management offers a very scientific and an organized methodology, uh, alongside with the options of flexibility and innovative solutions. So my advice to all the HR leaders is that you now have a solution that can really help your hardcore business leaders get data-driven decision-making pointers of the change adaptation cycle, and will still allow you to practice that innovation with the employees that helps them to smoothen their journey of navigating through the change that they are going through. So I think now you have that balance, and that final element of tool, that what you're always looking at is how do I transition between employee voice and concern and feedback to uh, to these business leaders who just understand bottom line matrices and hardcore numbers. I think that is my advice, that hey, help people with what they need. That's our role. If the stakeholders understand that, now with ProSci, you have the ability to provide them the hardcore numbers and still allow for people oriented practices to be introduced as a result of that scientific methodology.
So, from your role perspective, what do you think would be the top expectations during a large scale transformation?
Oh, multiple. I wish I could capture them all, Sudeshna. Being a sponsor of the change, being an advocate of the change, managing, supporting employees through their emotions who are which they're experiencing of from this change, providing trainings to build the knowledge about this change, providing leadership trainings to maintain the effectiveness of the people managers who will coach their people on this change, being the voice of employees for the project team and the leadership on how the change is being received and perceived both. That and also maybe at times where required, enabling this change through any compensation decisions which are required to be made, even through that.
Great, thank you.
It was always nice to talk to you, Sudeshna. Thank you for inviting me on this.